Scott, appreciate your time today, man. I'm excited to talk more about what you built with AIQ, but I want to take it back. Let's start with the origin story before we get too far. You spent years helping teams evaluate and develop athletes. How did AIQ come as a result of all this work that you've been doing over the past several years?
Yeah, the origin story was when I was in grad school learning theories of intelligence. I was curious how teams were using that to assess talent. This is going to tell you how old I am. I was back in 1998, and the debate was, Peyton Manning versus Ryan Leaf. And Ryan Leaf was tabbed as this guy with a cannon of an arm and all this upside potential. But Peyton Manning, everywhere he went, he just won, and his dad was a Hall of Famer. So I said, gosh, we do all these things to assess talent and to help develop and build players. What are we doing between the ears? And I just noticed there wasn't really anything in the space. So I went to my partner, my now partner, friend then, Jim Bowman, and he's like, I think we can build a better mousetrap. That was the origin.
So you guys have been at this for a long time. For someone who might not be familiar with AIQ and what exactly you all are trying to solve, can you kind of give the rundown or overview from a high level of like what AIQ is and how it helps athletes?
Yeah, I think a comprehensive athletic profile consists of four domains. So the first domain is physical. Are they big? Are they strong? Are they fast? And you'll see this as people move up levels, right? Of up into the pro space. Like this physical thing starts to become narrow, and the difference becomes narrower and narrower. So everybody's big, everybody's strong, everybody's fast. Second bucket is more about experience, knowledge, training, right? So you know what kind of linebacker you're getting from Alabama, you know what kind of point guard you're getting from the University of Arizona, that kind of stuff. The third bucket is about personality and character. So, is this guy a locker room poison or is he a glue guy? That kind of stuff. And then the last bucket is intelligence, the ability to solve constantly mutating, ever evolving puzzles. And the AIQ measures sport specific intelligence that helps. It's the kind of intelligence that you need to solve puzzles.
Got you. So when you look at kind of that methodology today, what do you feel like teams? Well, one, I guess to look at, obviously pro level scouting is very different from maybe collegiate and even like youth level, for example, as we're seeing that become more commercialized and professionalized. Does this methodology and concept apply to younger athletes, or is this strictly for professional based scouting and talent?
No, no, no. I mean, again, when Jim and I created this, our goal was to have it be a focus on development. When you understand how somebody does something, then you can replicate it, you can improve it, you can also find ways to support it. So whether some aspect of what you do is a strength or some aspect of what you do is a potential wobble, once you understand it, then you know what to do with it. Sometimes the analogy I give to coaches and front offices is I say, look, like intelligence exists whether you measure it or not. That's the same thing as saying like the couch in your living room. It exists whether the lights are turned on or off.
Mhm.
If you keep the lights off, you run the risk of tripping over your couch. If you turn the lights on, you have the ability to sit down and make yourself comfortable.
Mhm.
So I just think well-informed people make really smart decisions.
So ultimately, you would say the problem that you're solving for organizations is more about making better decisions, or is it equally like improving development and also I would even say like predicting future performance for athletes as well? Is it kind of encompassing all those different things?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the complexity, like it's funny. Everybody kind of thinks of winning as being a relatively easy concept, regardless of sport, right? Whether it's hockey, football, basketball, baseball, etc. But every team, I think people sometimes think winning is easy just because if you watch as a fan, every Sunday, one team's going to win. Like when two teams play against each other, one team's going to win, the other one's going to lose. So it's like, well, someone's got to win. Might as well be me, or it might as well be the team I'm cheering for. But when you actually are in the building, when you're kind of participating and engaged in the practices and the installs and the player development, everything else, what you start to realize is this stuff's really complicated. Because as much as, the San Francisco 49ers want to win, the Philadelphia Eagles want to win just as bad. And so when these two teams play against each other, they're both trying to play this three-dimensional game of chess in how to put people in good situations to succeed, how to navigate the space, how to get the players in readiness shape, and it's just complicated.
Hmm. Obviously, a lot of professional sports organizations are becoming more data driven, especially with AI and implementing new technologies. Where do you feel like organizations may be still, having blind spots or missing in some areas?
Oh, that's a good question. What are the blind spots? I mean, it feels like it's getting harder and harder to see the blind spots because the resources are really making things brighter. I could see an area of growth and development in human interaction. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that, and this is kind of like a societal thing, like this, it's funny, like sports imitates life, life imitates sports. Like, technology's really changed how we've done things. It's dropped our attention span. It's improved the way we can communicate or even get in contact. Like, if you want to right now email Patrick Mahomes if you wanted to get in touch with Patrick Mahomes, you actually have a way to do that through social media that 20 years ago, fans and players did not have that kind of direct contact. So I, I just think as we've evolved in the way that we interact as human beings through social media, through direct contact, through coaching, teaching, development, like I think that's an area that I would put some time and attention on.
Mhm. That's interesting insight. Um, Thinking back to like when you guys first started implementing AIQ, like obviously, I in my experience, sports as a ecosystem is usually slow to move and slow to adapt. So was there a lot of misconceptions or skepticism around organizations and the mindset of their athletes and wanting to implement this kind of technology and methodology when you first started, as opposed to like looking now?
So sometimes when Jim and I talk, my partner, we almost laugh because of how easy we thought it would be. So we thought we were just going to present them with this new piece of information like, hey, this guy's processing speed is superior, or this guy's spatial awareness is something that you're going to have to come up with a solution for. And what we realized was the first version of the report, the first version of the information we delivered, people looked at it almost like it was a pass or fail, like this is a good score, this is a bad score. So we were like, we got to change that. So we recalibrated it where we made the reports more descriptive. So instead of saying like this guy has, good multiple target search, the ability to scan the field, instead of saying he has good multiple target search and bad learning efficiency, which is the ability to download and recall, we started to say players with this kind of profile have the ability to identify details, important details. So we, instead of making it about good scores or bad scores or high scores or low scores, we really said, let's kind of describe this player. Let's make a narrative. What was interesting was, so first it was the numbers, and that kind of confused people. Or they
Mhm.
just locked on it as like, same way like we look at numbers like with the basketball game where you go, hey, 105 beat 98 last night in
It's
the game.
binary, right? Like
Yeah.
it just, yeah.
And it's just, but in the reality of the world, like sometimes a score of 105 to 103, like on like an intelligence test, like those two scores are pretty close. It's not a difference. So you don't take the guy with 105 over 103 because it's like those two scores are identical. So first was the scores, then we realized no, it's more about a narrative. And then what we've recently done, and I feel like this has changed everything, is we created an AI bot. We call it the AIQ Plus. And what's amazing about the AIQ Plus was we fed it over 297 documents on sports specific intelligence. Then we gave it the 25 years of things that we developed and things that we would provide for teams, like development books, scouting reports, everything. And then I reached out to some of the coaches that I worked with in the NFL, for example, and they were kind enough to give me their playbooks. Like, hey, this is Team X's playbook from last year. We fed all of it to the AI bot. it took, I mean, it's amazing technology. It took it like 3 minutes for it to digest,
Wow.
right? It was like Neo from the Matrix. It was like downloading I know Kung Fu kind of stuff. What's amazing is the AIQ Plus, you can ask it questions like, how do you coach this player? Is this player best suited in this style of offense? What if I were to move this player from position A to position B? So just to be like real concrete, like, and let's just use NFL. I've got NFL in my brain right now. Let's say you've got a player, we'll call him Malcolm L. So Malcolm L is a middle linebacker. So you can ask the AIQ Plus, is Malcolm L a middle linebacker? Is he the green dot? Like, should he be the captain and should he be the person the coach communicates? The AIQ Plus can answer that. You can ask the AIQ Plus, is this guy better served in a 3-4 defense or a 4-3 defense? Is this guy best served for blitzing or zone coverage? Could he do man schemes? Could he be more of like a joker role or a hybrid role? That kind of, so like, it's just really, and then we actually did this with the AIQ Plus where we asked it, how could Malcolm L interact with some of the players that we already have in our database that are on the roster of this team? And it
Interesting.
talked about, hey, these two players would be really well together. And then it's like, how would you coach Malcolm L? And it's like, oh, Malcolm L would benefit more from formation photographs than he would from studying playbooks from last season, things like that. It's amazing what the AIQ Plus can do with this information.
Wow, that's remarkable technology. And obviously, you guys started with football. You talked a lot about football, but how does AIQ apply to other sports? Is there a difference in how the assessment works across different sports or levels?
Yeah, so the measure and what we assess is universal. Like spatial awareness is spatial awareness. However, in football, spatial awareness is really about knowing where you are on the field.
Yeah,
So think like pocket presence, like as a quarterback who has
yeah,
pocket awareness, knowing the pocket's class. In basketball, spatial awareness is all about floor mapping or court sets. So, when they talk about people who know about floor spacing and
yeah.
really know how to, like, there's some teams where um, you just don't want to bring an extra defender to the shooter kind of stuff. So spatial awareness in basketball is all about floor spacing. Spatial awareness in soccer has a lot to do with that 360-degree view and awareness. So if you're a central midfielder, it's the idea of having a sense of what your defensive formation behind you is, as well as what kind of things are in front of you and where you are in relation to all of that. So that way you can also take meaningful passing lanes and attacking lanes.
Mhm.
Same thing in hockey, tennis. So what we found was we went in depth with the information. There's 16 points of data on the AIQ. And by going with such kind of fidelity and depth, we were able to make it sport specific. The interpretations can be not just sport specific, but actually position specific.
Mhm. At the beginning, you talked about Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf, and obviously they had two very different careers. But when you think about some of those overarching traits that drive success for an athlete or even a coach, like, is there anything maybe like a top two or three traits that come to mind when you look at um, the differences in the success of one athlete or individual to another?
From the AIQ or from a sports psychology lens?
Let's look at both lens, like if there are differences
Oh,
in that perspective.
so so I would say this from a sport from the AIQ lens, because that's easier.
Yeah.
The nice thing about intelligence is a genetically stable trait, which means we can measure it objectively. It's like facts, not perception or beliefs, facts. Because of that, and because our database now has over 16,000 professional athletes, we've been able to publish 5 peer-reviewed research papers. And those were done by professors at universities. They were not driven by our company, so there was no financial influence or bias. And the 5 papers, 3 of them show statistically significant correlation between AIQ scores and on-field performance in the NFL. One is showing statistically significant correlation between AIQ scores and NBA, on court NBA stuff. So, like, think effective field goal percent and rebounds. And then the last one was in Major League Baseball. So, when you think about universal qualities, I'd say the AIQ has identified, of those 16, there's a couple that are across all sports, like spatial awareness and multiple target search are two. So multiple target search is the ability to scan and look for minute details. A batter is scanning the pitcher, looking for minute details of what might be a clue, like when a guy flares his glove to adjust his grip, that might suggest a fastball's coming, that kind of stuff. In basketball, multiple target searches, you've got the ball, and you've got to distribute it, and you've got to quickly scan where your teammates are and where the opponents are, and how can you thread that needle. Football, it might be the quarterback engaged in a pre-snap read and identifying, okay, well, where's the mic, that kind of stuff. So that's multiple target search. So those would be like some of the AIQ universal things: spatial awareness and multiple target search.
Mm-hmm.
Reaction time too. Because reaction time has been associated with things like turnovers and turnover prevention, right? Higher reaction time tends to get the ball faster and everything. From a sports psych lens, it's interesting because I find the literature to be all over the place.
Hmm.
And I find that we tend to follow trends like grit and resilience and all that. And I think what I keep coming back to, so this is more subjective, where AIQ is objective and it's locked. I find psychology is way more subjective. It moves and it flows and it evolves. And I think the one universal truth, so you asked for one or two, the two that come to my mind from a sports psych lens, one is competency. You have to be good at what you do. Now, how you go about becoming competent, there's about a million ways to do that. Like, some people are just gifted with it. Like, the game kind of clicks for them, right? Others work their ass off. Pardon my language. Sorry. Others work their butt off, right? So I think one universal truth is someone has to be kind of good at what they do. And I think you have to put time in. Even if the game comes easier to you because you're physically gifted or anything else, at some point as you matriculate up into higher and higher, more elite levels, you have to still put in the work. And so I think when you understand why people want to become competent and you lean on that why, good things happen. And the why is not always universal. Like, some people do it because they love the game.
Yeah.
Some people do it because it buys their mom a house. The second universal truth is, I think production is a formula of the person and the environment. And the environment is everything: the location of the team, the coaching staff, the resources that are made available, like, say, in the high performance center, etc. So I think when we get excited, and I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but let's just use right now, like Myles Garrett, 2-time defensive player of the year. The Rams are like, we want Myles Garrett's production, right? So they trade for him, but Myles Garrett's production was really a formula of him and his talents aligned with things like his defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz's play calling. So the Rams traded for Myles Garrett hoping for his production, but they didn't take the whole formula. They got Myles Garrett part of the formula, but do they have the Jim Schwartz play calling part of the formula?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chris Shula, their defensive coordinator, I'm sure, is studying film going, oh, I see Jim Schwartz uses them this way and uses them that way. So I'd like to think that they would adopt to that. But you just don't know what are some of the biggest activators in an environment.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a player once that I worked with who found a lot of peace and calmness having conversations with the nutritionist. And when he went to a new team and those conversations with the nutritionist went away, he was very unsettled and his performance suffered, and no one could figure out why. Like, his health was fine, his psyche was fine. It just, there was an element to his process, which was talking to her at lunch every day. He had to calibrate to, had to calibrate to her
Yeah.
absence.
Super interesting. Um, as we look long term, like obviously you guys built an incredible product, been at it, a lot of research and time. When you look at, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years for AIQ, what you're trying to do, what does that look like for you all? Like, what is the long term strategy here?
I mean, I think the thing that we're proud of is that we're able to help in an impactful way. We're able to help the decision makers make well educated decisions. We're able to help the individuals learn where their strengths are to rely on and where their weaknesses are to offset. So what I find is if you think about sport as this really rich woven tapestry, I think we've done this really neat job of being of service that have helped the individual who's coaching, the player who's developing, and the front office who's analyzing.
Mhm.
So 10 years from now, what I would love to see is how we can reach more people. So, yes, we're across all five professional leagues in North America. Yes, we're in Australia. Yes, we're in Europe. Yes, we're in Asia. Um, but I would like to do more. Like, I'd love for us to meet with a cricket team in India. Like there's so many, a hockey team in Russia. Like there's so many other places and spaces that I think we could continue to help people with this valuable information.
I love it. Zooming out, if AIQ, sorry, succeeds at the highest level, how does the sports industry look different 10 years from now? What does that like ultimate success look like?
Um, are you familiar with the good enough theory?
I'm not. Mm-mm.
All right, I think this one's pretty fascinating. Um, Research shows that the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to be successful and win like a Nobel Prize. However, once you have an IQ above 130, that statistic drops. In other words, the higher your intelligence, the greater chance you are of winning a Nobel Prize. But once you hit 130, like if you've got an IQ of 135 versus an IQ of 145, your chances of winning a Nobel Prize is equal.
Hmm.
Or another way to examine the good enough theory is with rebounding. It's natural and it makes total sense. The taller you are, the more likely you are to rebound. However, if you get to a place of 6'8", that statistical advantage of height is offset. So if you're if you're if you're 6'3" guy going up against someone who's 6'6", the 6'6" guy's got an advantage. However, what if I say 6'3", 6'6"? So 3 inches
Yeah.
difference. However, if you go 6'9" and 7 foot, same 3 inches, no
No
statistical
difference.
advantage.
Interesting.
So in the NBA, teams will over attenuate to height if all they're looking at is rebounding. In fact, you can make the argument if you know a 7 footer, it's something like if you know a 7 footer, I think it's like there's a 10% chance they're in the NBA. That's how common 7 footers are in the NBA and how rare they are in society. If all you need is a rebounder, you might overspend trying to get a 7 footer when someone who could be 6'9" might do the job just as well.
Hmm.
So the good enough theory is about once the statistics have kind of like become irrelevant, once everybody's fast enough, once everybody's good enough, how do we now seek another competitive advantage?
Yeah.
And so, sorry, that was a long-winded way of saying what I would love to see with the AIQ and what it's already started on its journey is, hey, both of these guys are fast. Both of these guys are tall. Both of these guys, like all of a sudden, these other things that are good enough. So it's like, this guy's a little bit faster than this guy, but not in a way that would make an indication of better performance. Now, all of a sudden, the AIQ comes in and it says, even this guy who's less fast, but he can process the game at a higher level, his performance is going to be awesome, kind of thing. And and we see this like in the NFL, where you have 7 rounds. First rounders are physically gifted. But fourth and fifth rounders, you can find these hidden gems that might not look like a ball player, right? Like, that guy's not very big or fat. And I think of guys like, I don't know if you remember, like Julian Edelman or
Yep.
Danny Amendola.
Hmm.
Like, these were folks where they just didn't look like prototypical wide receivers,
Yeah.
but they were unbelievably productive because of their work ethic and their intelligence. They were super crafty. And that's what I think is super neat. And that's what I would love to see is as we get everybody to be big, strong, and fast, because we have figured out a lot of things in the weight room and in nutrition. As that stuff starts to level out where everybody's big, strong, and fast, I'd like to think the AIQ is this competitive advantage that just helps you understand and get 2% better, 3% better when those marginal gains actually translate in significant ways between wins and losses.
Yeah, for sure. Scott, this has been great, man. Super insightful. Where can people learn more about you and also AIQ?
Yeah, I would say, you can go to our website, which is just, www.aiq.team. There's also a link there to email. So if someone wanted to email, they could. You can also follow us on a lot of social media stuff, including, I think, LinkedIn. A lot of people seem to like to gravitate and follow our LinkedIn page. So that's also just aiq.team on the LinkedIn and on LinkedIn. And I think you could probably find me that way too. Me personally, I don't really have much of a presence. Like I don't have a website or anything, but you could always get me through the AIQ.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate your time, man.
Thank you.